Ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome to the BlockCrunch podcast, the go-to podcast for investors and builders in crypto. And before we get started, just a reminder for you guys out there, the BlockCrunch podcast is intended for informational purposes only. Neither the host nor its guests are licensed financial advisors, and nothing discussed should be construed as financial advice. Views held by BlockCrunch's guests are their own, and sponsorship messages do not constitute financial advice or endorsement. With that out of the way, let's jump right in. Today's episode of the BlockCrunch podcast is brought to you by Protocol Labs, the team behind Filecoin. So to tell us a little bit more is Colin Efren, who leads ecosystem at Protocol Labs. So Colin, can you tell us what's one thing that people misunderstand about Filecoin the most?
One thing people don't realize is that the launch of smart contracts on Filecoin in Q1 of this year will transform the Filecoin network into the world's largest open data economy and a full-fledged layer one within Web3. Most people think of Filecoin as the world's largest decentralized storage network. And while that's true, the community onboarded 450 petabytes of real data in 2022, up 18 times from the beginning of last year. Q1 of this year is transformational. The community is launching the Filecoin virtual machine where users can start writing programs to automate storage and renewal of data, pay for computation, and trigger retrievals. All of which is built on a permissionless market of hardware providers that is 15 exabytes in size. This will open the world's largest data economy and make Filecoin one of the most powerful layer one blockchains in Web3.
Hello there. Now, before we move on, I'd love to thank the hundreds of you who have subscribed to BlockCrunch VIP, because with your support, I've been able to share my real thoughts on specific projects that I don't usually share on interviews in a format that I enjoy more, which is bi-weekly written posts. We've also been able to offer exclusive AMAs, sharing my investment frameworks, interactable models, and breaking down important trends before they become big. Now, we even had Elon Musk comment on one of our threads recently. So if you haven't already, head on over to theblockcrunch.com/VIP, and you can access dozens of hours of research for what you'd spend on a coffee a day. And hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the BlockCrunch podcast. It's been a little while since we recorded a new episode, and I'm here in our Singapore office. Now, today, I'm really excited to cover a really exciting topic, which is Web3 social, because since as early as 2018, Web3 proponents have wanted to replace centralized social network that abuse user privacy and data. But the vertical has always kind of lagged behind many others in crypto. So to give you some examples, we had Twitter, but on-chain like PeepETH way back in 2018, for those who remember, which was a little bit more than an experiment. But then we also had BitClout, or DeSo as they're known as now, a venture-backed Web3 Twitter clone, which some viewed violated user privacy right out the gate. So we had a little bit of fumble in the early days. And lately, we've had really hyped up projects like Lens and Forecaster, but so far, neither have really hit the inflection points that DeFi and NFTs have. So the big question our listeners have is, are Web3 social networks just too early? Or are they a pipe dream? Or are they the next big thing in crypto? So to explore this, I'm really excited to bring on one of the earliest decentralized social graph projects, and also the market leader by far by user count, which I'm also an angel investor in. So today, I'm really glad to have with us on the show Ryan Lee, the co-founder of CyberConnect, to share with us more about the decentralized social vertical. So Ryan, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks so much for reminding me, Jason. It's an honor.
Yeah. So before we started recording, we talked about some exciting news that just came out about CyberConnect. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. We've been thinking about this for a while to really build a user-owned decentralized social network. We're finally making the move to announce our own token, which would eventually lead to the decentralization of who is actually governing the protocol. So this morning we just announced CoinList public sale, which is going to happen on May the 18th. Very big step for us.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, and I'm really excited for what happens. So we're going to cover that later. But before that, you've had a really interesting resume, Ryan. So before we even start with what CyberConnect is, what decentralized social is, can you tell us a little bit about what you were working on before you started CyberConnect?
Of course. So I don't know where to start, actually. So my journey into tech, especially into building softwares, when I was in high school, I got into building tech when iOS was still like very popular. I built my first iOS app when I was in high school, and then right after that, me and my a bunch of my friends at college, we started this company called Sketch Off, which is like a social network. When I was only 18, at that time we thought, well, people don't really post genuine photos or genuine posts anymore on their social networks. They are always like photoshopping their nicest photo when they're posing in the gym or whatever. And at the time, we wanted to build, like, bring some genuine self-expression into social networks. That was a really great experiment. And right after that, I worked at Google. I worked at Instagram. Both like both companies were like the biggest tech giant, especially for Instagram. I did a bunch of stuff for the Instagram client to make users love or use Instagram more, especially on when they are not in the best kind of network setting. So especially for the
Mm.
third, third world countries and those users. But anyway, after those experiences working at the big tech, I decided to work on Web3 full time during 2017. And at the time, I was exposed to Bitcoin since 2014. Built a bunch of random stuff during hackathons, and 2017 was the time I saw, well, people are starting to really realize that token economy is something that's going to really change how social networks or just networks gonna how networks are going to work. And I got a lot of inspiration from the existing projects at the time, and we decided to build our own, what we call, decentralized content economy, where we want to reward the best content through a token and through a blockchain that we designed from the ground up. So at the time, we built what we call a Lido network, a blockchain on Cosmos, and then we built a application or a platform on top of it, which is called DLive, a decentralized live streaming platform. At the time, we had, so since launch, like since after like half a year of launch, we had more than a million daily active. We have more than 30 million monthly. We had PewDiePie as our exclusive streamer. So everything
Mm.
was like a great experiment. And the reason why it kind of worked is really, at the time, contents are just not monetized enough, or to put it a different way, like streamers or content creators in general are not getting a fair distribution of value from centralized media companies like YouTube or Twitch. They probably get at most like 30, and on average getting like 50 or 70% of the cut taken away from Twitch or from those platforms. So the how we designed it was like really open it up to create this token economy where every user is part of stakeholder for the network, and they're always going to enjoy the upsides, as well as like they have the right incentive along with the platform. So that was a backstory. DLive was eventually acquired by BitTorrent in 2020, and I stayed at BitTorrent for a while. Almost the same team. We regrouped in 2021, and then we started CyberConnect. We did a lot of experiment in between, and we also had a lot of different thoughts about what's the best approach, and we decided on building the fundamental social network layer for any application to build on PA. And I think that's where 2021 was a key moment in a lot of the Web3 movements, where some of the standards like ERC 721 was becoming very popular. And then we decided to really bet on building an infrastructure for all the um, developers to build upon. Yeah, that's like a quick story into why
Yeah.
why CyberConnect.
Yeah, I remember seeing that news around BitTorrent acquiring your company, your previous company, DLive. I think back in 2020, right?
Yes, early 2020. Yes.
Yeah, that felt like a lifetime ago because that was like before all the COVID stuff started happening. And then I think CyberConnect was launched in the time of COVID, right?
It is in the time of COVID. We started CyberConnect in 2021. We explored a little bit in NFT world, and we decided, as I said, like to bet heavily on building the infrastructure layer for any kind of Web3 social.
I think it's quite poetic that you guys started a protocol to connect people in a time when people were all separated during COVID. And so I'd love to kind of dive into that theme because obviously that's the mission that Web2 social platforms have tried to go after for a long time. And you worked at one of them before a while ago at Instagram. So what is the main challenge with Web2 social platforms today? What is the opportunity for Web3 to come in?
Yes, I think in general, what Web3 brings to any kind of work is really um, direct monetization on chain, where they can do any kind of monetization through NFTs, through ERC20, and then a governance model where everyone is part of the network, so that they have incentive to drive the network to a long term success. So those two play very well along with the how we see Web2 content platforms or social platforms evolve throughout the years, right? One of the biggest challenge with Web2 platforms where like content creators are not monetizing enough. They are pretty much taking 10% of the total revenue from everything that the platform generates. Like all these different platforms generates tens of billions in revenue every year through ads, through subscription. But then like the content creators are only generating probably less than 10% of that. And the reason why they are very much being constrained by the platforms is really they don't own their data. Like they don't own any kind of content that they uploaded to these platforms. They don't own the audience that they have. Take one quick example is when we were doing DLive, um, Mixer acquired the biggest streamer from Twitch, who was called a Ninja, who was a
Mm.
pro gamer, a pro esport gamer, and it was biggest star on Twitch. And then eventually, when he moved to Mixer, he brought like 30%, probably less than 30% of his traffic, of his audience to a different platform. So two problem that we saw was like, well, content creators are having a very hard time of monetizing their content or monetizing the attention that their audience brings, as well as like they have no interoperability. There's no chance that they can bring their audience to a different platform, or if they want, as a regular user, you can't really enjoy any kind of interoperability when you want to bring your friends, your any kind of your social interactions to a different platform. And that really kind of blocks any kind of innovation that happens in social. Like, right, we're still using the same social platforms from like almost 10 years ago, just because the amount of data that they gathered to themselves, the walled gardens that they created. So that's like the big problem that we're facing. And I think Web3 with the right amount of incentive and the right amount of ownership could really solve that. So that's why we started CyberConnect.
Yeah, I mean that's a pain point that I personally feel as well because I think so many people, like content creators like myself, putting in so much time on Twitter, bringing people to Twitter. I think one of the best performing threads we had like 40 million views, but we're not getting paid a single dollar for any of those. But instead, we're actually paying Twitter now because they have this new model for blue checks, which is crazy to me. Which is why I'm so excited about CyberConnect. So let's dive into CyberConnect because you guys are building a decentralized social graph. Now, for unfamiliar people, what exactly is a social graph?
So how we're seeing a social graph, or more generally like a decentralized social network, is really how do you own your identity, or like pieces of your identity. You might have multiple identities across different platforms, but like how do you really own them and have the capability of bringing them along? How do you own your content and your distribution? Like how your audience is seeing your content, how are you monetizing them directly? These are the problems we see commonly found in Web2 social networks. So how we're solving that is really making users the owners, the actual owners of these, their profile, their content, their audience, their monetization channels, and baking this into a protocol that any application developer can build on. So CyberConnect is, in general, a set of smart contracts on chain and a scalable storage solution that helps storing all these data as a self-sovereign data, so that the content creators, the users, can safely trust the blockchain or the cryptography of it to own their data and not trust CyberConnect or any platform to own these. And they can safely bring them along to different applications that's built on CyberConnect. So it gives you like the sign in with Facebook kind of feel, but it doesn't give Facebook the ultimate permission of using all your data to do whatever they want.
So when you say data, this is like the personal information that you upload or your connections to like other user profiles as well. Is that kind of what makes up the social graph?
Yes. So your profile consists of, I mean, your names, your avatar, your bio, and then as well as how you're interacting with different content creators, different communities, how you're acting in general when you're just browsing through all these digital experiences. Yeah, especially focusing on the content creators and how they're engaging with their community.
So this is interesting, right? Because this is the type of information that creates a moat for networks like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. They want to keep this data because it's the lifeblood of how they can, target their users by understanding what you're consuming, what videos that you tend to like or spend more time on. They can target you better. So this is the money maker for them. So what is the incentive for, a decentralized network to build on CyberConnect if they can't own this data and have that moat?
Well, one thing is like we've seen that DeFi brings a lot of efficiency to the traditional finance, right? Like Uniswap can do like the same amount of trading volume with a much smaller team, with much smaller infrastructure. And we've been seeing that with a more transparent and more fair value distribution among the network, content creators among those social networks could really earn the same amount of money, as well as like the whole ecosystem can have a more fair stake into the value generation, and they can all benefit without having one central party that's like in control of everything. Imagine Facebook data or Twitter are more open, but then the efficiency went up by 10% or 100%. The whole ecosystem, like there will be more people building on top of the same infrastructure, as well as like the whole value generation will be more fairly distributed to every player, not only just the creator but also the curators, the viewers, as well as like as network can play a better part into this network. And I know this is very early, like a lot of these experiments are like, as we're seeing right now, the user numbers are way smaller than like the Web3 social user numbers are way smaller than the Web2 ones. But we've seen a lot of like real engagement, like long lasting engagements and connections happening on Web3 much at a much deeper connectivity versus the Web2 ones. And I think those are the ones. So our thesis is really bringing monetization better, like better monetization for creators and long lasting connections for everyone who's part of the network.
So this is a slightly different value proposition than I think what Twitter and Facebook are offering, because they're not offering better monetization platform. They're just offering platforms for more exposure. And folks, creators on these platforms now seem to be using other channels to monetize. Maybe they ask for sponsors and have those transactions be conducted outside of the networks they're on. So given the value prop for a Web3 social graph like CyberConnect and a Web2 social graph like what Facebook use is so different, for the winning applications or companies built on top of Web3 social graphs, do you think they'll be similar to like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or are these going to be like fundamentally different types of companies?
Facebook and Instagram, they're the type of company that they're early. They had their network built up just faster than anybody else. They don't necessarily provide the best UX or UI. Like at Facebook, I was when I was working at Instagram, it was at the time where they're trying to copy the story feature from Snapchat. It's kind of funny to see because they have a bigger audience at the beginning. They can still keep the mode by just not really innovating much. And I think in Web3, where when the data are not really controlled by the central platform, all the developers have more incentive to build better user experiences, better um, better monetization models for themselves, and then the users will just pick the best user experience instead of like, because I have so much data already on Facebook, I have like no incentive to migrate to a different platform. I think that's a that's a win for the long run, right? Like people would want to see more competition and more innovation happening uh, on every product.
Yeah, and when you talked about better monetization for creators on CyberConnect, can you give an example of how exactly does that work? So if I create something on CyberConnect, how do I make money from that?
Well, there are a lot of different layers when you make money on Twitter or on any kind of platforms. Well, first you have on most of the platforms you have to have at least a very significant user base, like at least 10,000 or 100,000 to start really monetizing. It has to go through multiple layers where ad providers and ad networks come in and you somehow get a scoop of all the ads revenue. And in terms of that monetization model where you have to go through different layers, CyberConnect provides a very natural, direct interaction with your audience. So right now on CyberConnect, you can create a post, you can create any kind of content where you can set a specific rule that how do you want your audience to engage with it. So let's say if you have a really great article and you want to monetize on top of it, you can say that either anyone who wants to consume this content has to follow me directly on CyberConnect by paying a monthly fee. And then these contents are directly available to those subscribers who are paying a monthly fee. Or you can say that this content is really only available for people who pay $10 to view it, which we already have. We're seeing content creators on CyberConnect making hundreds to $200 per blog that they write. So this kind of direct monetization without having to accrue a very large audience is what direct monetization means to us. So they don't have to build up their audience. They don't have to work with ad network directly. They can monetize on their audience, even if they don't have like hundreds of thousands of them.
So where does the Web3 element come in? Because you can already kind of do this on OnlyFans, right? On these kind of paid platforms already.
Well, I think the Web3 components play in CyberConnect. One is all these content that they own. It doesn't belong to OnlyFans. Like they can create these content on platforms that's not limited to CyberConnect. Anywhere that's integrated, any app that's integrated with CyberConnect, they can bring these content along. Anything that they post on one app is also available to other apps that's integrated. So you get more distribution, not just from this one app like OnlyFans, right? And as well, we all know that like I don't know if you are like I don't know how deep you are into the content creator part. The transaction cost of or like just in general the infrastructure for transacting or donating anything on any of these platforms takes at least 30 days to clear if it's a credit card.
Wow.
When we're building Twitch or like decentralized Twitch, Twitch takes 60 days to clear any kind of donation or subscription. So content creators are like they have to wait, and then not only just the waiting part, they can't really take any monetization from a different region, just because Twitch
What do you mean?
doesn't really like they Twitch is not operating in every region of the world. Like you don't get internet money. Like people have to have the right amount of access to the infrastructure that you can pay any creator on a platform. That's like very different from how we're seeing the internet money flows on Web3. So the two key components is one, you don't necessarily need to have one single platform control your distribution, and then you get the internet money where anyone in the world can directly donate or purchase your content, and then with this you get much less take rate. Like you don't like on Twitch or any of these platforms, the take rate is at least 30 to 50%, just because of the inefficiency of those platforms. But yeah, those
Yeah.
are like what we've learned throughout the years of building content platforms for the creators. I think right now we're not really yet to build like better monetization, just because the distribution is much smaller, right? Like you don't have the billions of users or like hundreds of millions of users on Web3 versus what you get on Twitter or on YouTube. Right now, what you get is really direct monetization with the true fans that you get as well as like building a long lasting experience or long lasting connection with your fans because they were so early. And then with the right amount of incentive, everyone becomes a stakeholder of the network instead of like I'm working for Twitter or like I'm relying on Twitter to make money. So that's like the current state. But in the long run, I think the efficiency really plays a much bigger part.
So just to kind of synthesize there, it sounds like being able to accept global payments and real-time settlements through crypto, and also having this kind of open social graph where I post on one website and it's immediately accessible on all the potential websites that are accessing CyberConnect. That composability is like the biggest, I guess, step function improvement over something like OnlyFans, where if I post something, I'm gonna have to post the same thing separately on a separate account, and maybe there's like non-competes, whatever. Is that kind of the main pitch to creators today?
Yes, and along with the connection that you actually make with your audience, right? Like I wasn't the early supporter of PewDiePie, but I was like early supporter of like a lot of the smaller creators. As they grow bigger, like my contribution in the early stage didn't really mean anything in terms of monetary value or in terms of community recognition. Just because the data is not available, no one can really attest that I was an early supporter. And building that long-lasting connection with your audience as well as with your friends is really what Web3 brings as well.
So as in like every follow and every like could be on chain, and you have very viable proof that hey, Ryan was the first guy to ever like a PewDiePie video. That's where the value is. That's interesting.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on like third party developers or providers can actually build on these data. Like there's literally no way for you to as a applicant developer, there's no way for you to build like a separate layer for like loyalty or any kind of these recognition platforms for creators on YouTube or Twitter. Like there's no way to know who are the earliest supporter of Jason or block crunch on Twitter, right? Like because the APIs are not open. Like that's also like building a long-term connection. It doesn't depend on a platform. It doesn't depend on a closed API. It's really important for more innovative applications to come along. Like you can have third parties building more incentivized loyalty programs for you. Like whoever listens to this podcast can level up or in some other ways like gamification ways. That's not possible on any kind of podcast or YouTube, right?
Yeah, I think I can attest to just how frustrating it is to have siloed databases between different platforms. So we can't really figure out who was the first people to download the podcast because that data is not publicly available to us, and we can maybe see who are the early follows on Twitter, but there's no consistent easily viewable data on how much they engage with us. So what we do now is we have a newsletter as well, which is a paid newsletter for people who want to dive deeper into specific projects. So we cross-reference people who are subscribed on the newsletter with their email, and we try to guess what their Twitter handle is, see if they follow us on Twitter, and from their interactions, try to guess if are they watching our YouTube, are they downloading our stuff. It's just insanely complicated. So it makes no sense to me that there's no one open database for kind of all platforms to access, because for creators that would mean a lot. Now I'm curious for the user side though, because I think a lot of the value proposition for Web3 social as a theme is that Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, they take your data, sometimes they violate your privacy, and that was the big push on the user side. Do you think that's something that users care about as well?
Well, I think users care a lot about privacy. It's just like they haven't experienced anything like, oh, this is a very private data set that I'm not going to give to. Like they have no prior experience of working with that. So like it doesn't really bring much value at this point. Like if we were like operating under entire privacy conserving kind of environment, and then somehow Facebook come along and say, okay, we're going to take your data and do ads or whatever on top of that, then people are going to get extremely frustrated. So now it's like people care about it to some extent, but like not really on a product level. They still love Twitter. They still love all this Facebook or all these platforms. And how we're solving that is like Web3 doesn't necessarily bring privacy just by being Web3 or being decentralized. It brings ownership to like at the very beginning. Like you start to own your data, and as the infrastructure and different providers start to have more like data access control, some kind of private setting with more futuristic tech, like maybe ZK, maybe some of the MPC kind of setting for users to really review those data upon their consent. Then we have a much more a private environment. But Web3 itself doesn't really bring much more privacy. Probably brings more data into public just by having all these data available on public blockchains or public uh, decentralized storage. But I think it's a good step when users are starting to own their data, right? Like if you have as you said, like if you have all your data on all these fragmented platforms, like you really don't have any control of it.
Yeah, and as a creator, I'm always, I guess it's kind of my inner investor as well. I'm always trying to hedge my bets. I'm always kind of paranoid that one day, Twitter's going to take down my account and all my followers are gone. So I'm trying to diversify into, I want subscribers on my RSS feed, on my YouTube, on my newsletter, so that, I can diversify. But if I actually own the data, I don't have to think about that much and just
Yeah,
focus on the creating.
yeah, exactly. And all the consumers, all the users, all the audience that you have should have a consistent profile across different platforms. Like you shouldn't be like looking at different like emails as well as like a Twitter ID or like YouTube ID and try to compare and match them. I think that's
It should
the
be just
fundamental.
be one address, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Or like one username or one profile so that you can always align with them and you can see how they're progressing along with all your different funnels, right? Like how they started becoming your Twitter subscriber and then becoming your newsletter subscriber and eventually become some kind of paid audience.
Yeah, exactly. And I love to kind of dive into the current landscape in Web3 social as well. So there's many other projects and companies that are trying to go at this vertical. I think that the earliest attempts were things like social tokens, where creators can issue their tokens, and if you buy their tokens, you maybe have like quasi equity exposure to what they're working on. That seems spiritually similar to what you were talking about being able to show your early support for creators. But in your opinion, why didn't you guys go with the social token route? Like, what's wrong with the social token solution?
Yeah, I think I was exposed to social token back in 2019ish when like Rally was like really big. One promise that they gave was like social token gave this kind of quantifiable commitment an audience can give to a creator. One thing that I found that the market doesn't really like was first like the free like expressive, like the token doesn't really mean anything until the creator have to set up a specific rules, and the creators just don't know how to really take advantage of that. And as well as like the speculation part of it really kind of screws up like hardcore audience don't really care about the right. They want your creator to be successful. They don't want to speculate on your creator's social token. So that really creates some kind of externality where when speculators come in. How we are seeing it is really if there's one very simple way that creators can recognize, or at least they know who are the core hardcore contributor or the early supporter, and the early supporters know that this data is also publicly or like at least freely available to the creators, and the creators will eventually do something good about it. That's kind of the long lasting social connection that we're still trying to bring to the audience and creator scene, so that creators will have the confidence that they will always recognize all the hardcore fans, and the fans will know that the same way happens on the other side. um yeah so to be sure, like I think social tokens are too expressive. Like nobody knows what to best leverage it for.
Yeah, I think you summarized the problem like more perfect than I've heard anyone summarize it, because that's exactly the problem I faced. I think we tried to issue our own social token with Roll, I think back in 2019 maybe, but that was the challenge I faced.
Yeah.
Is I just didn't know how I can enforce certain things, and when I even offered free tokens to certain followers who are pretty loyal, they're like, "I don't want your shitcoin." So it's just weird to introduce an element of speculation into earnest kind of fan creator connections. And I think that's what we saw with DeSo, with Decentralized Social as well, where all the creators were given these massive tokens that had some sort of monetary value tied to bonding curve. And what we ended up doing was we just dumped the tokens right away because it's just like random money out of nowhere. We don't want to work on this token, but you're giving me free money, so we're going to take it. So it's just always weird to me to have that speculative element. But moving away from the speculative social token side, there's also other Web3 social networks. So things like Forecaster or Lens Protocol, they've been getting quite a lot of attention. Can you talk a bit about what they're doing and how that differs from what you guys are working on?
Yeah, I think just to start, like we've seen a lot of different approaches back in the days. Like there were Steemit, there were the ones you talked about, like I forgot the name. Sorry, like there were like different decentralized social networks back at the time. What they were lacking was really like a composable layer, or at least the environment for composability, where developers can have the common understanding of building on top of something that they understand. And as we are approaching 2021, 2022 now, people know, okay, NFT is a standard that's going to be here for a while. And then like years to 20s and the usernames, like having some kind of username, user profile is very commonly understood. And building on EVM or like some kind of a major blockchains or like mainstream blockchains are getting more adopted. So Lens and Forecaster are I think they're really good approaches. We started way earlier than either of them. And I'm here to, I still say good things about both of them, where Forecaster kind of focused more on building a really good community vibe. It doesn't really matter about the tech. I think the tech is kind of similar to like Mastodon or like the earlier activity pub kind of protocol, but where they have very native community, very elite Silicon Valley like community. So it's valuable for those users within the community. And for Lens, I think they did a good job on building some kind of a common layer with an entirely smart contract based approach, and then onboarding developers to build whatever they want. And for us, we took a very different approach. Our approach is more like we started earlier. We were exploring all kinds of different ways to express this common standard of how to express social interaction, social connection. And we landed on having a smart contract plus hybrid Arweave based approach. So users both enjoy the scalability of Arweave brings, as well as the tokenization and monetization on those smart contracts. On top of the protocol, we have very different approach in terms of product or go to market. So we build our own product. We're very product driven. Where our product is called Link3. You can visit it on link3.2. It's like a social network that looks very similar to LinkedIn plus Eventbrite, where every organization can have their official profile where they can display all their official links, their official team members, their backers, as well as using those profiles to create content. So they can create a blog post, they can create an event where, let's say they have a community call coming up, or they have like an AMA with another partner coming up. They can register them on Link3, and users will come to explore these communities through different type of content, events, and blog posts. So Link3 was like more of a restrained or like confined approach. Instead of building like, oh, let's build another Twitter, we were really more focusing on building something that people are really used to. Like people are used to reading articles. People are used to attending those AMAs or Twitter spaces, and even in offline events. So Link3 is becoming, we want Link3 to be the place where they can explore things on Web3, becoming the distribution channel for all these projects and communities and creators to showcase their stuff to the community. And Link3 has so far the best traction. We have 900,000 monthly visitors on the site. We have more than 400,000 transacting users or wallets through the CyberConnect protocol. And I think our approach, at least, is what we're seeing as working. It's very different. It doesn't sound like Twitter, as sexy as like, oh, let's build another Twitter. But it works.
Yeah, and I do realize that on the Link3 website, you guys report about 890,000 total cyber profiles. I think if you compare the similar number to like Lens, there's about 112,000 there. Forecaster about 12,000 there. So How did you guys get like this much of a lead on your kind of alternatives? Is it kind of first mover advantage? Are you kind of creating the profiles for the projects, and how do you like onboard so many people?
Yeah, that's a great question. We took the same like invite only or like gated approach to start with, similar to other alternatives where they kind of have this invite only access in the beginning. And during earlier this year, so January or February of 2023, we started working with more ecosystem partners. So before that, we were like solely focusing on Link3. We want to make sure that Link3 has the best community, best creators, and we after we approached a very big amount of user base, we started to open it up to developers. And earlier this year, we partnered with BNB Chain to do a hackathon where we onboarded more than 50 developers. And that's when we opened it up. We opened the profile registration up to a lot of the users so that they can easily onboard to any application built on CyberConnect, not only just through Link3 or through us. So that was like a big push. We see about 30 to 40% of the traffic going to applications that's not built by us. So that's a good sign. As well as we saw that CyberConnect protocol, like the .cyber username and the tokens or NFTs that we issue through the CyberConnect protocol are being integrated into other applications. So that's also a good sign where people find this or developers find this valuable to them. The social connection or the social interactions are valuable to other applications. Yeah, and that's only the very beginning. I think the approach that we took is the right approach for the team, and we are iterating our protocol to make it so much more fun and so much more versatile in the next coming month.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of versatile, there's one project that I actually spoke to recently called Favor, Phaver. So they're
Yes.
building kind of like a Twitter clone, I want to say, that's built on Web3 Rails. So I think they actually started by building on Lens. So you can create a Lens profile, but I think recently they're also announced they're launching on CyberConnect. So I thought that was really interesting. So because they're launching on two different Web3 social graphs. So do you think like social graphs and Web3 are actually competitive with each other, or they eventually end up being just one big social graph, or is it like many different flavors of social graphs? How is that going to pan
Well, I don't have the crystal ball to see like how is it going to pan out.
out?
But my general take is like social graphs take very different forms where there are different topology in every different social application. There are different geo user base. So for Favor, I think it's the right approach for them, right? When they are at the intersection of different protocols and they can freely leverage all of them, as well as like having like this kind of aggregator effect. And in the long run, I think it's the ones that really provide value or provide user retention will win in the long run. And yeah, I don't have a crystal ball. Like I think Favor is doing well. I like them. I like how they're integrating with us. They're just starting to integrate with they started integrating with the profile side of it earlier, and they're integrating with the content part of it as well. I'm just excited to see how this experiment plays out.
Yeah, and I guess on the juicier part now, because obviously the way that Facebook and Twitter make so much money is by not opening up their data. So for CyberConnect, obviously you can't just like close source all your data and become another Facebook. So how does CyberConnect actually makes money in the long term?
Well, there are different ways, and we've been experimenting with the revenue model from the very beginning. One is what we're seeing very common now, like selling usernames. People do really want to own their like out of everything. People want to own their username. So Telegram sells their username. Twitter does with the blue check mark. YouTube does it as well. So CyberConnect started out when any user wants to register a cyber profile, they can either choose a free profile with a longer name or they can purchase a premium name. And we've seen a good amount of revenue from just selling those usernames. So that's a good sign of like user actually caring about the name. And the other part of it is really taking a very small amount of transaction fee out of all the paid transactions on the protocol. So when you're minting something that requires some token or like when you have to pay to mint something. We would take a small fee out of that. These are very early, by the way. Like I don't know how the protocol is going to play out. I think the monetization model is going to change so much when we have much more user base. But I think just having a fair distribution and fair way of looking at all this transparent data sets, we can really easily reward those good players among the network, right? So I don't think ads are bad players, right? Ad networks and ad providers are still they're the ones actually paying for everything. It's just like they are not really paying for everything. Like a lot of what they pay goes to the pockets of Twitter or Facebook. But having a more transparent, more efficient network could overall make this whole network a positive sum game instead of a zero sum. So that's my initial take. We're still very early, by the way. We're also exploring a lot of different stuff where maybe the identity plays a stronger role, where users have a cyber wallet that's attached to a profile. So taking the profile even a step back, where they're beginning the journey into Web3 starts with something that's attached to CyberConnect. So that's something we're exploring as well. But yeah, very early.
Yeah, I'm excited about how early it is. And I think this is a perfect segue to our last question, which is, you see all these Web2 social platforms coming up with new dopamine loops, like Be Real. I think every year there's like some form of new gimmick for socials that keeps pulling new users in. And it seems like the Web2 guys have really mastered a way to capture users. So how do we convince people to switch from Web2 to Web3 social in the next, in the next few years?
A couple of things I think will play out. One is like the dopamine part of it doesn't really it's not bound to Web 2 or Web 3, right? Like, you can always do all these like infinite scroll kind of play, or like some kind of gamification where users want to see how they're rewarded with the next video or with the next scroll. But then most importantly is how we are treating the creators, right? Like these platforms eventually are run by the creators. It's not by Twitter or by YouTube. Creators have to have a sustainable long-term model for them to work. I mean, there are some kind of social networks where they're focusing more on like the close circles, like Be Real or Snapchat, where it's not really necessarily like a social media. It's like more a DM type of a like communication tool. But for the type of the social media or the people or where content creators are most important, they have to have a sustainable way of making money in the long run. And that comes back to how we're solving this from the beginning. One lesson that we learned from building DLive was we were able to bring PewDiePie, the largest YouTuber at the time, onto DLive, was really aligning their goals with the company's goal or with the protocol's goal. So when PewDiePie joined DLive, he is technically a stakeholder of the protocol. So everything that he earns is in what was in the token that we had before, and he became the biggest one of the biggest stakeholder of the network. And I think that could really bootstrap like onboarding Web2 creators to Web3 with the right amount of incentive, where they're no longer just like, oh, this is a new platform I just want to explore, and I don't want to get like, I have this FOMO of not like, if I don't get onto the new platform, I'm going to miss out. Now, if they get on CyberConnect, they are actually part of the network. They're very early. They're going to be the biggest stakeholder of the network. So that's how we're going to, with the right amount of incentive, we're going to onboard all the creators from Web2.
Yeah, and I honestly think this is one of the most overlooked verticals, and people are often thinking about it the wrong way. So hopefully this episode will be out there and change the narrative on it and get people excited again. So I'm really, really excited for this CoinList launch as well. So Ryan, for people who want to keep up to date with what you guys are working on, with trying out CyberConnect, for creators who want to create their Link3 profiles, what's one place they should go to right now?
Please follow us on Twitter for now until we build something better than Twitter. So
I love that.
You can find us on CyberConnect HQ on Twitter. and we'll build something out better. Hopefully, in the next episode, we can showcase something. I'm not gonna end this with go to follow us on Twitter. Yeah, we're also on we're also on Link3, so link3.2/CyberConnect. You can find everything about us. As if you're a developer, come build with us. Build on top of CyberConnect. You get all the user base, get all the tools that we provide. If you're a user, come and explore through different applications built on CyberConnect. And again, thanks so much, Jason. Thanks so much for bringing it on.
Yeah, amazing. I will include all those in the show notes below. And thanks for coming on again. All right, that's it for this week's episode of the Blockcrunch podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe on your favorite apps. And in case you didn't know, this interview is also available as a video on YouTube. And if you tag the Blockcrunch on Twitter this week and tell us what you liked about this episode, I'll be sure to respond to you as well. Now, if you'd like to go even deeper, we have a VIP tier where every week or so, we write an in-depth research brief or investment memo on a project. And we'll have exclusive AMAs with myself where I answer all your questions as well. Now, we already have analysts from some of the top funds and companies in crypto as subscribers. So if you're serious about getting an edge in crypto, head on over to theblockcrunch.com/VIP to learn more. And once again, thanks for supporting the show, and I'll see you next week.